Hello and welcome to another late night talk. My returning guest this evening is Cameron Johnston. Hi Cam, how you doing?
Hello, it's nice to see you again.
Yes, and in a few short weeks, dear viewer, we will be in the flesh in the same room in Glasgow at Worldcon. So for those who aren't
Probably
going,
over a pint, yes.
yes, you're going to miss out. Two of the authors of the Tall Writers Club will be there, and there'll be several others in attendance, and I'll provide badges for
I,
everyone.
I think I'm a junior member, to be fair. I'm only 6 foot.
No, you're not. You must be like, you must.
I am.
Oh dear. Oh no, the minimum
Mm,
height 6'2" for a man. I'm withdrawing your badge.
mm.
The lanyard, I'll have to get it cancelled in the post. It's oh dear, that's
Unless you've been shrinking these days. Mm.
quite possibly due to age and osteoporosis. Yes, it's very, very possible. As I get older, the limits come down.
Yeah.
We're not here to talk about that. We're here to talk about you and your books. So, for those who haven't
Yeah,
seen
books.
yes, books. For those who haven't seen the previous interview, do you want to give a quick sort of reintroduction to who you are and your books to date, and then we'll talk about your new book at the moment.
Yes, so my name's Cameron Johnston. I'm a Scottish author who writes slightly darker, gritty fantasy, I guess. So my first two books was the Age of Tyranny duology of the Traitor God and God of Broken Things, which is a sort of Second World noirish sword and sorcery kind of thing. My third book was The Maleficent Seven, which is, it's a bit like the Seven Samurai, but they're all fantasy villains trying to protect a town from an army of, well, good folk, shall we say, or at least they think they are.
Mm.
It's all a matter of perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and my new book, The Last Shield, which can only really be pitched as Die Hard in a Castle. It's, that's sort of what it is. It's a bit more, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
but that gives you the idea.
Okay, so we're here to talk about the Last Shield. If you want to check out Cam's books, other books, there are links down below, and obviously the Last Shield too. But so tell me about the Last Shield. What was the core idea for this? Was it just like you wanted to do something like Die Hard, or did it come from another place?
Yeah, it actually came from the character. I find quite a lot of my writing comes from having an idea for a character and going, "Wow, they sound really cool, but what story would they be in?" And then it just all unrolls from that.
Mm.
So it was a bit of a wet and windy day, and I was climbing up a stone staircase, the Scotch castle, up and up and up and up, and slippery stones out onto the battlements. And I was thinking, well, you read a lot of fantasy battles, but you don't really read about the aftermath.
Hmm.
You don't really read about the wounded and the disabled warriors and what happens to them. And I was like, maybe I should write a story about that. And then this character Brier just immediately just leaped out of my imagination. And then it was 2 seconds later, oh, Die Hard in a Castle. You know, it was that easy. I was like, right, okay, I guess I'm writing this then.
Okay, so
So I wanted to get away from the kind of medieval side of things, even though I was in a medieval castle.
right.
So I was thinking I'll base it on sort of Bronze and Iron Age Scotland,
Okay.
and it just gave me that something a little bit different, made it a lot more exciting for me to write.
Hmm. So tell me about Briar. What can you tell me about the character without spoiling it?
Yeah. So she's the commander of the Shields. So she protects the Sunwheel Palace and the Regent and the royal line. And during an assassination attempt, she suffers a horrific wound, and there's a period of recovery from that, and during which she tries to recapture what she was, except now she's got this debilitating wound that causes all sorts of restrictions. So there's a period of coming to terms with that. She's not quite managed it by the time events happen,
Hmm.
and yeah, so she's dealing with that massive changes in her life while some raiders infiltrate the palace, take over the palace, and they're trying to get the arcane artifacts that are stored in the worm vault beneath it.
So there is some magic and mysticism in
There
this one as
is.
well. Tell me a bit about that
Yes.
then.
Well, I mean, the vault itself is essentially made out of a giant dragon skeleton, fossilized dragon.
Oh wow.
So there's all sorts of arcane protections on that put in place by druids and the Fey precursors. Yeah, various monsters and summonings and pleas to the gods, all that sort of thing. So lots of good magic stuff,
Hmm.
lots of good fighting, crawling through tunnels, beating people up, all the good stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So my question is there like a tech genius like we had in Die Hard that knew all the IT, and the equivalent of this is like a kind of magic genius who has to help them crack the vault?
Ah, well, the leader of the Raiders is a sorceress.
Okay, yeah, yeah, that'll
So,
do it.
yeah, and she's using blood magic to break through the barriers.
Right, yeah, yeah, okay,
So,
that'll do it.
lots of people captured, um, royal blood, all that sort of thing comes into play.
Mm-hmm. Okay, okay.
Try not to give too much away.
No, no, no. So this is your fourth book,
It
published
is
published book. I
definitely published. Yeah, there are other ones that no one's getting to see.
Well, yeah, yeah. We should say like before Cam and I were published, we were going to conventions for many years, watching agents and editors and other people and other authors talk about books while we were sending books off for junk trunk novels that never actually went anywhere.
Mhm.
Um, I know the answer to this already, but I'm asking it for the benefit of the viewers. Was this book any easier to write now that you've done so many and that you've now got like three published, now four published?
It was much easier, so much easier. The
Viewers and
problem,
listeners, he's lying. For those not watching, for those listening, Cam is lying.
well, I mean, the problem with the first two books is it's all from pretty much all of it a single point of view,
Right.
which means you've got all this stuff happening in the background, which of course I can't show you
Hmm.
because it's not from his point of view. So you have to see the results of that. And then with my third book, Maleficent 7, I had 7 major points of view. So quite the reverse. So I can show everything, one extreme to the other.
Hmm.
Uh, and this one, it is mostly from one point of view, but there are other points of view and other things going on.
Mm.
So, I can show you all the stuff going on. I'm not quite so limited.
Hmm.
So in that respect, it was much easier.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Suddenly you're able to kind of move somewhere else briefly to see something that you
Mhm.
need to. You don't have to have someone suddenly stumble upon that information and reveal it to the single point of view so that they know the thing
Mhm.
that they need for the plot.
Yeah. But of course,
Yes.
every book has its issues. And
Yeah.
for this one, I had to do a lot of research.
Right. Tell
Um,
me about it.
so there's a lot of kind of Bronze and Iron Age research I wanted to do.
Right.
So, like from the arms and the armor to, the trade network, what they ate, crafts, dyeing yarn, um, horse and carts, and, standing stones and rituals and all of this stuff that you find in, archaeology and arcane history books and all this sort of thing.
Mm.
And then, of course, most of it never actually makes its way into the book.
No, no, no. You spend months doing it, and then like a couple
Yes.
of weeks worth of
It ends up
actual
being like a
research goes
single
in.
line somewhere that just explains something, distill it down. Other than having 4 pages, and it's like, right, and now back to the story.
Travel times and horses and saddles
Mhm.
and yeah, yeah, I did that
Yeah, I mean,
with
it's sort of based on, as I said, kind of Bronze and Iron Age Scotland. So, the horses were a very rare thing, proper riding horses, and
right.
they didn't have stirrups either. So, horseback fighting
Ah.
is kind of
Oh, suddenly a lot more complicated and difficult.
yes, exactly. And they don't have steel. They don't have iron either. So that automatically changes a lot of the armor and weaponry and the furnishings and all this sort of thing.
Hmm.
So, really interesting to research. And then, it might influence the way the world's built slightly, but most of it does just because left out for, pacing. And most people probably irrelevant, to be honest.
Well, the fact that it is Bronze Age will it will change things. So both Cam and I have done blacksmithing experiences where we've gone into a forge and made something with steel. Now, I did a sword in a day, and clearly you can't make an actual sword in a day. Mine was shortcut for many
Yeah.
reasons. But we've read fantasy books for decades. We saw, steel sword fights all the time, and they're, smashing each other with the blades and ching, ching, ching. Suddenly that's not quite going to work the same way, is it, with Bronze
No,
Age?
it is not. I mean, I've got this sword behind me here, actually. You'll notice it doesn't really have the square hilt you would expect.
No.
So, if you want to stab someone, that'll stop it going in, or your hand going down the blade. It's not quite the same on that one. It's more of a slashing weapon.
So every fight now has to be different then, based upon the weaponry.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've got my shepherd's sling here as well. So I spent some time learning how to, fling stones with that. And, various little things about that just helps give it a little bit more authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So every single fight scene is now going to be different to what people are going to expect from a normal one, because based upon even the weaponry. Yeah. This is where I'll be calling on Miles Cameron, be like, how does it work?
Pretty much, yeah. That's always a good call, I think.
Writing, fighting, Miles, how does it work with Bronze Age weapons?
And because Brier has a wound to the leg as well,
yeah,
that automatically changes everything she can do.
she won't be as agile, she won't be as fast, she won't be able to put her weight on both her legs at the same time.
Yeah, and your standard fighting stance, you've got knees bent. So more difficult.
So did it take you a lot longer to write the fight scenes then? Because you kind of fall back on the basics of and then she's swinging and no, can't do that.
Yeah, I mean, you've got your Conans and your John Wicks. You've got your agile acrobatic fighters that are just mowing through people and jumping here and there. Can't do that. She has to fight a bit smarter than that, a bit more calculated, which I found really interesting to write.
Definitely make it a challenge for sure. Every time you're gonna have to suddenly stop before you just wade into a fight scene. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I like a challenge. I've not tried that before. I tried historic fantasy.
Yeah.
Like
we're
research.
Back to all the research, aren't we?
Yeah, let's not do that. Let's not do that. So how long did it take you to write the first draft of this book then, given the extra challenges? Was it longer than normal?
No, well, I don't really have a normal.
Well, okay.
I mean, it was partly written during lockdown.
Right.
So I finished off the Maleficent 7, and then I started this just towards the tail end of it.
Yeah.
So it maybe took just over a year.
Right. Yeah. 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 I think the shortest I've done a book was, because it was during lockdown, was 7-8 months or something. So yeah, it always seems to take roughly the same amount of time. But then there's all the hours beforehand that you spent on research that doesn't quite get logged in the same way.
That's very true.
There's the research phase, and then there's the writing phase, and then there's the editing phase.
I mean, you know yourself, as soon as you start doing research on something, especially, historical research, you're on Wikipedia, you see something really interesting. Oh, this link goes here. Oh, that's interesting as well. Oh, have a bit
5 hours later.
Yeah. Somehow you're on spaceships, you're researching Bronze Age forging and stuff.
You're like, oh, can I? So now, do you want to go and make a Bronze Age sword?
I do, very much so. I mean, partially because you can cast it. So you're a little bit cheating here, So you have a mold, and you can just get your bronze and pour it in, and then obviously you have to finish it, but it's not like you've got a block of block of iron or steel, and you have to hammer it and stretch out and stretch out.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Interesting.
entirely different techniques.
Yeah, that would be unique to do. Maybe you could do it in a day if you built the mold, I suppose. You could probably do it in
I
a
mean, I
day.
suppose you've got to carve the handle and all this sort of stuff as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the bronze sword I've got over there, it's by a guy called Neil Burridge.
Hmm.
So it's pretty much an exact replica of the Tarv sword that was pulled out of a river up in Aberdeenshire.
Right.
So that's as accurate as it's ever going to get. It is wickedly sharp. Like, oh
Research again, getting fruit
yeah.
in the back garden.
I mean, there's massive amounts of lost skills on forging bronze weapons. So yeah, it seems to be getting in modern times, getting back to that, where people have been rediscovering it.
Hmm.
So that's been really interesting for me to follow that along over the last couple of years as well.
Mm.
Find out all the secret techniques.
Yeah, there's a lot of lost skills, I think, as technology and society moves forward. We lose a lot of things that aren't as useful, perhaps, but some of them can still be very interesting to learn. And I'd rather someone had those skills than no one. It's
Hmm.
whether it is forging Bronze Age weapons or just how to make a steel shirt, ringmail shirt and things like or
Hmm.
chainmail and stuff and all that
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Oh, that's torturous. Absolutely torturous. I mean, you've got little individual rings, and then you have to bore a hole through them, and then you have to rivet it. I mean, maybe they
Hundreds
got
of
really fast
times.
at it because of that experienced. I don't know, but I certainly wasn't.
No, so like I went to the Black Country Museum here in the West Midlands where they make chains. They do it. There's a guy who makes a chain and does a demonstration for you, and he
Hmm.
shows you like he makes a link and puts it on another link and kind of says, "This is how they did it. This is how it works. This is what you do," and then he kind of says, "Right, if this was your job, you'd have to make so many links per day in order to be paid." And they test every link, and if one of the links that you've made that day fails, you don't get paid. Like even if the rest are all okay, you don't get paid.
Hmm.
So your skill level has to be up to that
Oh
level.
yeah. Hmm.
Um, and then he showed us a bit of a chain that was part the same size as the ones that were used on the Titanic. And it was
Hmm.
like one link took, 8 men so many days to make, and then that the whole chain was however many meters long. And you're like,
Hmm.
how
It's
many fucking
fascinating.
months or years did
Yeah.
it make? And you start totting these things up, and you're like, but it's just stuff we've lost, stuff we don't do anymore.
Yeah. I
Um,
mean, I don't know about you, but I've done some foraging as well. You're like, you see all these plants, you're out for a walk, and you don't realize, like, a good proportion of them you could actually eat,
mhm.
you know, but not that one or that one. Definitely not those mushrooms. That's
No,
that's my
the
problem.
traditional toadstool mushrooms. No, 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 those will
So,
kill you. Yep, yep. The red and white spotty ones, very poisonous, very poisonous. Yeah, yeah. But there is. It's just that thing. Yeah, there's a guy that around here that does like courses on those things, on literally on foraging. You can spend like an afternoon
mhm,
with him, and he shows you and um huckleberries and things like that. So when I went to
mhm,
Canada, the bears come down and graze on all the huckleberries, and they have to have kilos of it to get any kind of nutrition. But technically, you can eat them because they're okay
mhm.
for us. So things like that, I also find fascinating. Nature skills and outdoor skills because we didn't have society was just so radically different. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
so
I
you
mean, it does give you a little bit of an insight into, a tiny proportion of what things were like back then.
it's totally different mindset. That's the thing. I have difficulty now convincing some young people what life was like before the internet. They
Hmm.
they think we all just sat around in the mud playing with sticks. Now, back
Hmm.
in the like 80s and 90s. So imagine trying to convince someone of that generation
Absolutely.
what they did back in the Bronze Age.
So that's part of what I liked about writing this book. In some ways, it was kind of like me exploring a little bit of that myself,
Hmm.
portions of what it might have been like. So
So,
I really enjoyed that angle as well.
so did you discover any things that really surprised you about that kind of era or that way of living?
Yeah, I think part of it was the trade networks. Certainly in Western Europe,
Right.
I was like, oh, there's like boats that are like 6,000 years old and things like that. They were, and they were before the Romans even ventured into France.
Hmm.
They were the British were trading tin
Oh, to the
all
continent.
over Germany and France, and yeah.
Oh,
And
fascinating.
then you've got Stonehenge. You've got people coming over from Germany, which are buried there. And it's like people travel a lot more than we thought they did, you know?
Yeah. So interesting. So bizarre. Like they keep finding bones, like you say, of people, and they're like, this is a so and so. And you're like, why is that there? Why has it been there for that long? Why
Right?
do we
Yeah.
like
And there's a place up in Orkney called the Ness of Brodgar.
mhm,
And you know, this is predating the pyramids. There's a massive kind of temple network, great construction, thick walls. Uh, no one knows why it was there specifically. And then at some point there was a massive feast. So you've got like hundreds of people would have been there because of all the cattle bones they found that date to the same period.
right?
And then it was just covered up. They just covered it up in dirt and just forgot about it. And
Mm,
I'm thinking, why?
some kind of red wedding scenario.
Yeah. Or like, oops, we summoned an eldritch god. Oh, cover that up.
Uh, yeah.
And now they're excavating it.
Yeah, it's like they found that, what was it, 8,000-year-old black coffin. They're like, oh, let's open it up.
Mm,
No, why would you do
no.
it? Got some weird writing we don't recognize. Let's read it out or try and work it. And like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. So
Hmm.
did you go and
And
did you look at the
it's great.
religions for this era?
Well, I mean, the problem is it's prehistoric. So all you've got to rely on are the Greeks and the Romans, who are, incredibly biased.
Hmm.
So it's kind of like you can take bits and pieces of what they say, but everything else, massive handful of salt.
Right. So did it
So
give you a bit more
that was my
leeway
starting point.
to build your own then?
Hmm. So yeah, take bits and pieces and kind of, I guess, being a fantasy author, make it up. Elements of realism.
Yeah, yeah. Because you
What else can you do? You look at the scant history you've got, like say on the Druids. So you would have like a tiny book of it that thick, because that's all that was ever written about them.
mhm.
And then you've got archaeology and your best guess.
Yeah, because you go back to in Britain and in other countries in Europe, and a lot of the Christian churches were built on the site of what they could now call pagan temples because they burnt them down or they knocked them down. But by building the church on the same site, it meant people still kept coming there for worship, and instead they're trying to get them to convert to Christianity, and that's what happens. But there's a my parents went to a church in Europe somewhere. I can't remember where it was now. But in the basement is the original ruins or part of what was the original pagan temple. You can go
Oh,
down and
really?
see like a crypt. They're like, oh, this is a crypt. It's not the crypt. This was what the original temple was before they put the church on top of it and things. But
That's fascinating.
we haven't got anything like that in the UK as far as I know, because it was complete. All of them were completely destroyed. Then you go back to what were they made from in that era? What were they building
Yeah.
with? It wasn't stone. It wasn't quarried stone to the level that we have, at least. If it was quarried stone, it wasn't
Mhm.
stuff that's going to last thousands of years that we can go back and go, oh look, it's this. It's
Yeah,
so.
I mean, you've got the hot springs of Bath, you know? So you've got the Romans coming in, going, oh, these sacred springs, we're going to build a massive bath complex there and use the healing waters and, we'll hyphenate our gods and
Mm,
just kind of take it over that way.
yeah, yeah, this is it. Just put it over the top. But the Romans were quite weird in some ways, in that they had a lot of like cults, didn't they, within their soldiers?
Mm.
Like
Hmm.
Mithras, is that one of them?
Yes, Mithras, yeah.
Yeah, so they have, yeah, it's even that soldiers had strange kind of groups within groups. But The Romans were very strange. Anyway.
I mean, I suppose when you're posted up to, one of the walls for a year or three, strange things are going to happen
Mm-hmm.
in the back of Beyond.
So is there an element of strange in The Last Shield, an element of weird in the book?
Oh, definitely. I'm not sure I'll ever write something that doesn't have that.
I figured as much. Yeah. Yeah. I thought that was going to be the case. Did you base the climate and the landscape on Scotland then?
Oh, definitely. So you've got the kind of mossy pine forests. You've got the ancient standing stones and the stone circles, all the kind of trackways and the rivers and the kind of hills and all this sort of stuff.
Hmm.
Yeah, so it's very much taking inspiration from that.
Hmm. And you got plenty of stuff to walk around for inspiration as well to kind of explore.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Hmm. I mean, I'm not going to run out anytime soon.
no, like I need to go and find a castle. If only there was a castle nearby I could visit in
Yeah,
Scotland. Hmm.
I
Hmm.
know. I mean, I'm thinking of maybe I should go on a trip to Wales at some point. Yes.
Don't they have more in Wales than anywhere else, though? Isn't that what they say? Like per
Yeah, they
square
do.
foot in.
The most castles, yeah.
That's so bizarre. That's so bizarre. But yeah, they have. I should go and explore more of Wales. Just go and see the castles, really. Um,
Hmm.
you know.
I went when I was very young, and I loved the castles there. There was all these little kind of like tunnels and tiny little doorways that the parents can't fit in. And you'd run through a tunnel.
Uh-huh. Yeah. I used to love going to Bamborough Castle, and now it's got the whole kind
Mm,
of Last Kingdom thingy as well there
yes,
in Bamborough. So I want to go back again to go and see all that stuff because
I
I'm a
was
fan
there
of.
last year. Yeah,
All right, did you see it? Did you see the
in
whole
that exact same
exhibition?
exhibit. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Oh man, I do want to go and see that. My friend worked with Eliza Butterworth, one of the actresses on the show, and she went up to
Mm.
Bamborough and filmed like people going around looking at the exhibition. They got to her thing and they were like, so- and she posted that on Instagram. It was quite
That's
funny. Like,
brilliant.
oh my God, having pictures with her cut out and her on the other arm and stuff. That was hilarious. For those who went
I
that
just
day.
love those double takes.
Yeah, there's like, yeah, the hair's slightly different, but everything else is exactly
Mhm.
clothes, but everything else is exactly the same. Yeah. Oh God. So who would you cast then as Briar if they're gonna because they're making a lot of fancy films and
Ooh.
TV shows these days, and they could do it in
Mm.
Scotland at one of the castles. So who do you see as
Yeah.
Briar?
I mean, this is my problem. I've been asking a few people, and they're like, "Ooh, you know what? I don't know either." Sooner or later, everyone comes round to Gwendolyn Christie.
Right, yeah.
Brienne of Tarth.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, yeah, I could totally see her doing that, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm struggling to think of other people that could.
Have you seen the old
Um,
the old guard, the film on
I
Netflix?
have, yes.
I
Hmm.
keep thinking Charlize Theron because I like her in everything. She's excellent. But I've seen her run
Generally
around
is,
with a
yeah.
sword in that film. I'm like, yeah, yeah.
I mean, there's certain actors you're just like they'll be good in everything. Yeah,
It's just like put them in. Doesn't matter. It's a comedy. Doesn't matter. Put them in. It's a drama. It's fine. Fine. Satire. Yep. Put them in. Put them in.
yep, pretty much.
Yeah. I yeah. Charlize Theron, Gwendolyn Christie. Um, who else? Trying to think who else could be.
I mean, I would have cast Linda Hamilton. Um,
Mhm.
age difference might be a little bit much now.
Yeah, yeah. Because Briar's not exactly a young woman though. She's a bit older though, isn't she?
Yeah, she's in her 40s sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Linda Hamilton, like 30 years ago, perhaps.
Yeah,
Yeah, but
that.
if only there's some kind of time traveling robot that could go back and change something so that we could.
If only, you say.
Yeah, I know. Did you conceive of The Last Shield as a standalone? Was it always going to be a standalone when you were planning it?
It was always going to be a standalone.
Right.
You know, it's one of these things you feel like you could go back to a book.
Hmm.
So, I do have an idea for that, but I've no plans to write it at the moment. I just think it stands well on its own.
Hmm.
So sometimes you just don't need to meddle with things.
No, no. If a book does well and people really, really like it, there are ways to tell other stories in the same world without necessarily being a direct sequel. You could do a prequel, you could do a story with someone else in the same era. Yeah,
I
rather
mean,
than
yeah, there's lots of things I could do, but I mean, I'm not short of ideas.
yeah, that's one thing we're never sure. People are like, oh, where'd you get your ideas? We're like, it's not the problem with the ideas.
No,
It's
it's the time. Yeah. It's all these people, I've got a really good idea for a book and you could write it and we could split it 50-50.
you're like so you've had your one good idea then, is that it? You've had your
Yeah.
one, I've
Mhm.
been saving this idea. Like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's not great. It's been done 1,000 times or it's rubbish.
Yeah. And also, why don't you write it then?
Yeah,
Learn how
yeah.
to write, then do it if that easy.
Hmm. Yeah. Have you been tempted to revisit any of your other worlds in stories, or like a short story for an anthology, or anything like that?
I mean, people keep asking, when's the next Traitor God book? When are you going to like do a prequel to Maleficent 7? And I'm like, I mean, I could, but I've got all these other ideas that are far more interesting for me at the moment.
Right.
So those are the ones I'm going to write because I'm essentially writing for myself and what I want to read.
Yeah, that's the other thing. You're not trying to chase a trend. You're not trying to write to according to what's going on, because as we know, trends are fickle and weird, and what you write now won't be out for 2 years, maybe.
I mean, if I wanted to write a romantasy just now, I'd be like, oh yeah, dragons, dragon riders, definitely, yeah. But by the time I've written that and it comes out, everyone's like, no, no, that's yesterday. Now it's all werewolves. There's always you're always going to be late unless you have that exact thing at that exact time.
Yeah, and then people are like, "Oh, you're just copying so and so," and like that's not how publishing works. If I'd
Hmm.
done that, I would have traveled back in time 2 years to do that, and if I could do
Hmm.
that, I'd be like in Back to the Future with the book of gambling and football scores and go back. I wouldn't be trying to write a book from 2 years in the past. Like, I'd be Biff, basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. Hmm.
Uh, with the sports almanac. That's
You're saying you would abuse your power?
to make a lot of money. Yes, so I could write full time. Yes.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough.
That's the
I'll
Biff
give you
thing,
that one.
only up to a certain point, I think is actually good. I wouldn't want to have a post-apocalyptic state where I'm the ruler with, all that kind of thing like he was. But yeah, the sports almanac thing, a few little bets here and there. Hmm. Yeah, okay. Um, so what is next now that the Last Shield is out? Oh, we should say you've had the Broken Binding special edition, which
I
has been
have.
done.
Very
What was
pretty.
what was that process like, by the way? Did you work with you see the designs early and stuff? I know because I had
Yeah.
input on mine.
So I got a very excited email one day from Eleanor Angry Robot. It's like, oh, it's nothing signed yet, but somebody wants to do a special edition, and it's the Broken Binding. Oh, that was the energy given off, and I'm just sitting going, oh, give me the pretties.
Hmm. Your first special edition. Wow.
Yes. So it's my first hardback in English. That can read.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I was enormously excited about that, and then there was all the emails about like, oh, what covers we're going to do, and then in papers, and then oh, we're going to foil it. It's going to be shiny, which yeah, I'm stupidly excited about a shiny book.
It's fantastic though, seeing it all come together at the different stages. Like, what was it, Jim Butcher, when he was doing the Dresden Files? It was his eighth novel or ninth novel before he got a hardback or something. He'd been doing
Hmm.
them for years and
Yeah,
years. So
it's just enormously exciting to see it all come together. And then you get a little box in the post, and you're just like, oh, who's sending me something? You're like, it's my special editions with sprayed edges.
Have you got one there?
I do, I do.
Go on, show us it.
So there we go.
Look at this. Look at the
Shiny.
gorgeous shiny green foil.
Yeah.
Look at that.
The end papers
End
as well.
papers, the shield.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic.
So yeah. And
And the sprayed edges
sprayed
there.
edges.
Look at
Yeah,
that.
yeah, lovely.
Top and bottom sprayed. Show us the bare book as well. Don't tease us. Show us the bare book. You got to show the
There you
hardback.
go.
Look at that. That's fantastic.
Gorgeous.
It's just amazing.
So
Oh,
I may have sat with that for like a good hour, just
just
playing with it.
just the weight of it and the feel of it. Yeah, yeah.
It's just filed there under my fire poker that I forged. Stick some marshmallows on the end.
Yeah, mine's in the cupboard in the other room. My poker. So
It's good to
what's
have little
next?
reminders of what you've made.
Yeah, yeah. The sword is in the garage and the poker is there, and maybe next thing is the mold, doing the mold and the bronze sword or bronze dagger at least, perhaps. Maybe that's
Yeah.
trying to find a craft course for that though. That'll be interesting. I don't think I found any yet. But anyway, so what is next? What are you working on, or what can you tell us about what's coming up after the last shield?
It's another standalone, entirely separate to everything else. It's a little bit of a departure for me, and it's not blood and gore and in any way grimdark adjacent. Although there is a little bit, but I probably can't say much just now. But it's essentially mages in space.
Okay. Different. Very, very different.
Yes, very different. So it's just this mad idea I had of just doing something wildly different to stuff I've done before, and I think it really works. It was just really interesting and frustrating to write because then I had to go off and research science.
More research. Okay.
Research science, like the Saturn V rocket, and then
Right.
somehow translate things like that into magic because they don't have the science. So it's like, yeah. So it's an interesting problem.
You keep creating these unique problems for yourself, don't you? With the
At least it's not boring.
well, yeah, this is it. It keeps you focused and keeps you busy and keeps you entertained. And I always say if it's boring to write, it's probably boring to read. So
I mean, I know there's people that can, churn out book after book after book after book in the same world with all the same characters. Oh, I'm not sure I could do that.
yeah, I used to be like banging the drum, like, come on, where's the next Dresden Files book? And now I'm like, if it takes you 3 years or 5 years, I'm cool with that because at this point I don't understand after 20 years how he's still writing it and it hasn't just
Yeah,
killed all the characters off and gone, fuck it, I'm burning the
I'm
books,
done.
I'm
Yeah,
done. Like now, having done
it's
trilogies,
enormously impressive. Enormously impressive.
yeah, and he's stuck to the plan. Like he's doing 20 books and then a final trilogy, apocalyptic trilogy, and he will finish it. But having
That's a whole other conversation, finishing books.
yeah, well, yeah. Um having done trilogies now, I'm not sure I'd want to do anything longer, not in the traditional sense of, it's a 7-book saga and it's all one story. I would have to be really invested in something
Yeah.
longer than a trilogy because it takes so long to produce it and then so long to get out.
I mean, I quite like the idea of your sequel trilogy. So you've got one trilogy, and then you've got 3 other books that lead on from it that may or may not be that main character, or it's like set slightly after.
Yeah, like the
I
whole
like those
books
sort of things.
behind me are all, people say, oh, the Realm of the
Mm,
Earthlings, it's so many books. I'm like, yeah, but she didn't write it as that. She didn't like start on the Assassin's Apprentice and be like, I'm gonna do this three and then these three and then go back to this three and then these three.
mhm.
She wasn't doing the Jim Butcher thing of like when she first started out. That was not, as
Yeah.
far as I know, that was never
And
the
now I'm
plan.
writing about boats.
Yeah, now there's boats and then there's dragons and then there's this. And you're like, nah, she did what she wanted and went in her own
Mhm.
direction. So
Yeah. I mean, I suppose at this point, the thing for me is I want to have fun doing it. I mean, you spend enough time writing it. I want to have fun doing it as well.
yeah, yeah. I, I enjoy the writing process. I don't understand people who don't like the actual process. The research, yeah, it's a pain in the arse and it eats into the time of just writing it, but it helps get things accurate up to a point, and then the rest of it is fantasy anyway. But I still enjoy the actual process of working on that first draft. I hate the editing. I hate it. But writing that book is, how do you feel about editing?
Weirdly, I like it.
Why? What's wrong with you?
I just find it easier. And then you've got this clunky thing, and then
Uh-huh.
you're like, oh, this chapter's a bit clunky. I'm going to edit this. I'm going to polish this, and then it's this, sleek, smooth, fast-paced, gorgeous thing. And you're like, that's a good job done. Then you go on to the next one, or I like
Yeah.
seeing all the little improvements. I
Yeah.
even like the line edits when it's like, oh, I've only got like 1,000 line edits on your manuscript that need fixing. And you go through it and accept or decline changes. And I know I'm weird because every time I get my edits, like like a structural and edit stuff, I do the small ones first. I do the typos
Right.
because you look at manuscript and it's like in the letter and it's all just like red all the your manuscript. And you're like, do you know what? I'm going to do all the typos. And it's like that looks much more manageable now.
Right. Okay.
I've done the easy bit and it's not quite so overwhelming.
Hmm. Were there much structurally beyond typos on the last shield, or because you knew the rough arc of the story, did much change on the edit
No,
process?
no, very little structurally, other than there was a few chapters that were kind of condensed, or bits were removed because it was like world building and research and things like that because it was detracting from the pace of the story, and
Right.
then you agonize over it for a couple of days. But I love this, but on the other hand, they're right. Mm.
Hmm.
So sometimes you just hit it in the middle and you're just like, do you know what? I want to keep some of that, but yeah, I'll need to reduce that or yeah.
Mm. So what was the final word count and what did it start out at?
Well, my manuscripts always go up. Um,
Oh, interesting.
yeah. So whenever I finish a first draft, I think this one was about 108,000.
Okay.
And as I was doing my edits, even before I submitted it to Angry Robot, I was going up in the thousands every time, because I was adding in description and little snippets of research. And oh wait, that's even cooler. Let's do that,
Hmm.
which
Hmm.
always happens to me. So
Yeah.
I think it crept up to over 115,000 there. And then I spent
Right.
the robot,
Okay.
and then they wanted me to like condense a couple of chapters into one chapter, which I did. And then I added a couple of thousand after that, so it remained the same, just somewhere else.
Yeah. It's the pace thing though. Yeah. You focus on some bits that you particularly love, and
Mhm.
but it's that thing of, oh, are they really important to the plot? They really need to be there. Is it just because I like it there? And you're like, oh.
Yeah, I mean, they do say kill your darlings, and sometimes you do have to get rid of that thing you love because you just can't justify it to yourself. And if you
Mm.
can't justify it to yourself, you probably know it doesn't really belong there, however much you hate it.
Yeah, you might love it, but the reader isn't going to come into the book with the same viewpoint because they're not you. They're going to have their own
Hmm.
things, their own perception of what you've created. So, do you ever get emails or like messages from readers who say things about your book and you're just like, what?
I think that's a professional hazard, really, isn't it? You're just like, okay, I'm not even sure that's my book. What character's that?
I'm glad you enjoyed it, but mm, all right.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the first ratings I got for The Last Shield was some guy giving it 1 star. Hadn't read it because no one had at that point. 1 star, shelved as too woke to read.
But it wasn't out yet.
No one had read it.
Right.
I'm like, because it's a female character, and it was it was getting pitched as Die Hard in a Castle. Oh,
Mhm.
a female character, females fighting. No,
Can't have women in
none of that.
books. No, you can't have women in books. What's next? They'll want to vote and be able to drive and things next. I mean,
Mm.
can you imagine what a potential might happen? One might become being president of the United States or something. I mean, oh no, we can't be having that. That's terrible, terrible. Oh
But
yeah,
yeah, so I guess now that this is my fourth book. At this point, I've had 1 stars before, including all the loonies, and I'm just kind of like, whatever. He's just a muppet, you know.
yeah. I had someone like that on Judas Blossom before it came out. The same sort of thing. Probably even the same person that said it was too this, it was too that. It was total nonsense, blah blah blah. And I'm like, the book's not out yet. The only people who've read it is my editors, and you haven't read it. So I'm saying I bought it with my own money. I'm like, you can't have. The book's not out yet. Anyway, what fun.
People are strange. That's my conclusion.
Yeah, I'd say people are stupid. That's my conclusion, but that's just me. That's just me. That's just me. So The Last Shield is out now, and books Broken Binding. Check out the Broken Binding website. I'll put a link down below to see if there are any remaining copies of The Last Shield. If you want a special edition hardback, and if you're very lucky and you can find him, I feel like the 18 there, but if you're at
Yeah,
Glasgow and you can find Cam and
we're of a
you're
certain age.
you're a certain age and you have this book, you might be able to find him and get it personalized. And are you on panels, or do you know if you're on any panels yet?
I'm definitely on something. I don't know whether they'll
Okay.
reach the final program, but
Right. Well, when the final program comes out, I'm sure we'll all announce on social media what panels we're on and stuff. But otherwise, we'll be around. You'll see us in the bar, most likely,
yes,
uh,
probably.
and the dealer room. So pop by the Angry Robot table. It'll be there, and the Broken Binding have a table as well at Worldcon. So you'll just hopefully have copies of Cam's book there as well, so you can pick it up.
It's always good when readers come up to you and say nice things. I'm always happy with that.
Yeah, the weird conspiracy things, not so much. But the nice things, that's yeah.
I've not had that. That might just be you.
So when you did this, did it mean that? It did, didn't it? Anyway, on that weird bombshell, I'm going to say good night, and we'll see you all next time. Good night.
Good night.